Well, from my experience talking to the ladies, for example, the poor road conditions, the infrastructure, which enables the women to get the produce to the market, and so thus leading to economic problems. Not able to feed the family or to meet the family basic needs, and these some of the things that really triggers conflicts in the community, because of most of these needs are not being met by the parents or by the family.
But identity, gender equality, the road problems comes in land ownership, and this culture of silence, especially in the village settings. These are some of the barriers to a happy living conditions for women, peace, about street lights, road problems, having access to health centers. So these are some of the barriers to a healthy living or conflicts within the outbacks or the rural women.
Apart from the conflict that the Solomon Islands went through in 2000, in late 90s into 2000, they also have insecurity financially. I think that's the biggest one for them. Personally, domestic violence is one big issue for us.
Well, at the moment, I would say gender-based violence, climate change, and say the participation and inclusion of women in any decision-making place or arena.
As you go through the changes from cash economy from the subsistence economy to cash economy, and so these changes, this transition, is causing people to look at as money as a form of security.
For near 15 years, Femlink Pacific, through its work as a feminist media organization, has been using United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security as the core of all that we do. When we speak to women and when we lobby using the voices of women, we're constantly asking, how do we build a peaceful community, country, Pacific, and world? Adopted in October 2000, UNSCR 1325 reaffirms the role of women in the prevention and resolution of conflicts. Conflicts that have been loud and violent, and conflicts that have silently blanketed our people, stripping them of a quality of life that they are yet to rebuild. 15 years of women speaking to women for peace, working to prevent conflict, including the resurgence of conflict in their homes, communities, and countries. Who defines the potential for conflict? Whose definition of peace are we living in? Still, 15 years on, women are left out, almost never looked to, even when they see warning signs on the horizon. At the same time, there are not just concerns that may lead to future conflict, and then dealing with the problems when they boil over, but also stemming some of the issues of time gone by. The lack of revisiting the nuclear testing in the Pacific, guns still on hand in some of our Melanesian countries, and true reconciliation following conflicts in Fiji, Bougainville, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and Tonga.
That's why lots of work today with women in the government, because they want, comment dire, attraper le ciel, hein? Like God. Tu restes là où tu es. Et tu fais le mieux pour ta famille. La politique, qu'est-ce que ça veut dire? Faire la politique. Ça veut dire donner une bonne gouvernance. Hein? Le mot politique, en français, si tu vas regarder dans le dictionnaire, ça veut dire une bonne gouvernance. Simple. Bonne gouvernance, c'est toujours le mieux pour sa population. Toujours. C'est facile, mais ce n'est pas la politique qui est pratiquée actuellement. Pas la politique La politique, c'est toujours être, je veux être le premier, moi je veux être le premier, je veux la force nucléaire, je veux ceci, je veux cela. C'est pas ce qu'on veut. Les populations ne veulent pas de ça. Ils veulent une vie stable, correcte, en paix, la sécurité, hein? Et puis être tranquille dans la tête. Avoir une vie simple. On n'a pas besoin.
What really is standing in the way of that peace of mind, that simple life here in the Pacific? Through Femlink Pacific's operation of the only women's-led community media network in Fiji and the Pacific, much of our information gathering comes through women who have demonstrated leadership and communication skills in their community. These women hold the monikers of conveners and correspondents and actively engage women in their communities, as well as acting as a bridge between communities. One such convener correspondent, Losana Deranalangi from the west of Fiji, has seen the challenges that women face at each level of society.
You know, we talk about this, we talk about conflict prevention in the community, but most of this conflict starts from all this unfinished development.
In addition to the national media network here in Fiji, Femlink Pacific also convenes the Secretariat of the Regional Steering Group of the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. James Larkey is the current chair and leads Peace Foundation Melanesia in Papua New Guinea. He is also an active member of the Pacific Small Arms Action Group and recognizes what is possible when guns are present in disgruntled communities.
One of the main things is the lack of service delivery and having access to, like I said already, information, but general access to education, health, and well-being. If these things are not available quite easily, people are frustrated, create anger. They tend to have this, what they call, animosity against the authorities, and that creates conflict.
We need to support the structures that are inclusive and that are contextualized to how peace building is done in a certain context, in a certain society, in a certain environment that is conducive to the cultures and to the way of life that people live in their own environment.
Localizing UNSCR 1325, which was further bolstered by the adoption of UNSCR 2122, is a reminder that women are not just victims of violence, but a key to prevention. That is why our governments as well as the UN are urged to ensure that infrastructures for peace and security have a solid community-based foundation. Peace-building practice must also enable and support dialogue, because the more communities are heard, the more communities are participating in decision-making processes, the less chance of tensions.
Well, it's also very important to look at the infrastructure, starting at the community as the basis. And one of the things that we do in our intervention is that conflict resolution mechanism. That mechanism must be effective, accepted by the community, and it works for them. It must be user-friendly. When it does not, then we have conflicts.
Pacific security is discussed every year at regional intergovernmental spaces, and often without the participation of civil society, let alone women. So who is determining whether we feel secure or not? How can our regional structures be responsive not only to women and communities which have experienced armed conflict and political instabilities, such as in Bougainville, Solomon Islands, Tonga, and Fiji? How are governments connecting the fragility of peace with new and emerging threats such as climate change? Andi Vasulevu, as the convener for Femlink Pacific in Lambasa, has been bringing women together and hearing their stories in and from their communities. She sees the insecurities, whether it is the women in the sugarcane belt or informal settlements, and in her own coastal community.
Like, for example, in the Pacific, we might say we have some level of we have some secure. We are secure because we are not. We don't have wars, and we have food. We have abundance of food. And what does that mean? Is it really security? Do we have the quality of, access to that? And we do not have wars, but we have silence.
And there's a human security agenda. I think it's very important that the people up there understands what it really means at the community level, what human security means to them, and maybe then they can form a good strategy and how to combat all these, the definitions of what human security means to them.
These definitions can't just be left up to those who currently hold decision-making power, given all that has or hasn't been done so far. Decisions should be made not just with the community in mind, but with the community involved, and this means women. As UNSCR 1325 strongly affirms, women in decision-making is key for the prevention, management, and resolution of conflict alongside other visible direct consultations to ensure that facilitates community ownership of those decisions. There will always be cause for conflict. Poor communication, competing interests of communities, civil society, private sector, and government, and all of this is natural. However, given that the monopolized power has taken away from consolidating clear decision-making structures that enable ownership, conflict boils over, damaging individuals, communities, and countries.
Structures, local governance structures, because I think this should be fairly consultative across, beginning from community and to leadership level. And more, I feel like that's what I'm hearing from community, that the concern for the current structure is there are changes happening, but the changes, they have no control of these changes. The consultation with regards to the changes within the structures are not being inclusive.
Although why bother with consultation? If leaders have power, shouldn't it be their whim to execute that power? Sulik Wanga, creative director of the House of Chameleon, explains why inclusion and participation is critical.
Then there's this whole issue of sustainability about peace. If you leave a portion of a population out whose participation is very important in terms of sustainable peace, you cannot achieve sustainable peace without leaving a portion of population out. Whether it's women, whether it's disability, people living with HIV, LGBT, everyone needs to be part of the peace process. We have to be part of the planning, we have to be part of the implementation, the evaluation, and the reporting of all of this. We need to be part of all of that aspects and all the dimensions of peace building in order for it to be effective, and not just be beneficiaries or, be tokens of their work.
Inclusion has always been a massive challenge for civil society. Inclusion of women in all their diversities, youth, persons with disabilities, and persons of diverse sexual orientation and gender identity and expression all aims to offset the monopolization of power. This makes those in decision-making uncomfortable. There is still much work to be done to break down stereotypes and barriers. Decisions are everyone's business, and everyone has a stake in how decisions could and should be made. For example, a national budget may seem like some kind of far out of reach document for the average citizen. Yet it is that pile of numbers that decides what benefits you might have, the quality of healthcare you're entitled to, or even the price of food you need to make your children's lunch with. For James, addressing power monopolization and having more inclusive processes does not simply mean a handful get chosen to sit somewhere special.
Yeah, there are no barriers, but one of the things we are trying to discourage or tell our women folks as well is not to create a special space so that they are dependent all the time, but to be involved like everybody else and be counted, rather than to allow for special sanctions all the time.
With the Pacific having one of the lowest levels of political representation by women, it's no wonder that women's networks such as the Fiji Women's Forum and Fiji Young Women's Forum continue to lobby for temporary special measures, not only for national parliaments, but local government and local governance.
One of the biggest issues for us too, which always poses insecurity to women, is women in decision making. We don't have that. Like, for example, in Parliament now, we only have one woman out of 50 members of Parliament. So there's 49 and one woman member makes up the 50 members of Parliament. And since independence, which we had in 1978, we only have, up until now, we only had 3, I think. So that's one of the big insecurities for us, women in decision making. Not only in Parliament, but we also have that in all the stages of decision making, either it be in the community and also in the provincial level.
Unfortunately, these challenges are not just limited to women. The ownership of power is still very much monopolized, even in countries that have their leaders democratically elected. This monopolization that extends past the traditional decision-making structures by politicians and into nearly all spaces where decisions are made.
One of the obstacles I see is also space. The women and young people and even other men do not have that space, because when you have the politicians, it's the politicians' field, so you can't come in. But if it's a church's field, then you don't have lay people coming in and questioning, oh, this is the... And when you go to the cultures, it's like the chiefs and, the women and all that in the societies. It's good to have... I think one of the obstacles is that space. Space for young people, young women to be part of the decision-making body.
Yeah, there's a lot more obstacles, and it doesn't only exist in the cultural, traditional situations. It exists in churches, institutions. If you look at structures in the Pacific, it's basically men up there, yeah? In some countries in the Pacific, we've seen an increase of women's participation. It's not only just the understanding of men and who they are, but then the kind of policies that are put in place that further divides women and men. So that again is another key obstacle to women's participation. And it depends on how you understand policies, because in the grassroots community, they don't understand the word policy. They understand it as the way it has always been. So the rules and the norms and all that are big challenges to women, obstacles to women's participation and inclusiveness.
To ensure peace, we need to put more women in our government. Because women we don't have the same reflections on when we decide. On décide vraiment pour une bonne vision, un bon futur. Parce qu'on est maman, because we are mothers. And nous voulons toujours, we want all of us the best for our children. Who is the mother? Qui est la mère qui veut pas le meilleur pour son enfant? Who is the mother? She don't want the best for her children. But all of us, we want best for our children in our country, in our region, in our world.
Half the battle is ensuring women have a space at the table and having women to fill that space. The other half is ensuring that their voices are heard, taken seriously and into account, not just at the decision-making table, but in all spaces and at all levels.
Yeah, some women, some cultures, women are not allowed to speak. And sometimes it's just attitudes. Sometimes they think our place is in the kitchen and we know nothing about policies and we shouldn't be talking policies. It's for the politicians, or it's for the people who are very smart and clever. And also women themselves. And we were joking about no wonder there's no women in parliament in our country, because I think one of the obstacles too is that one. Like we don't see the uniqueness of the other person. We don't see their potentials. We just see, sometimes we see a threat. And sometimes we think that, they just want to be somebody and want to be seen by the media. But that's not the point. Now the point is that if you really want peace and security to be a real thing that is seen or is visible in communities or even families, we got to let the spaces for the women especially, and we got to accept the uniqueness of the others.
N'ont pas confiance en elles. Elles ont besoin de confiance en elles pour parler. Il faut cette confiance. Elles ont beaucoup de choses à dire, hein? Beaucoup de choses. Elles ont beaucoup de valeurs, donc des valeurs, mais elles sont encore timides. Hein? Elles sont timides, elles n'osent pas beaucoup s'exprimer. Voilà, il faut leur donner encore la confiance, et puis petit à petit, ça va revenir, elles vont prendre l'assurance pour parler.
So what is the difference women make?
So yes, young people and women are the very main high denominator who are going to be very impacted. It's either negative way or in a positive way. So some sort of identification analysis also being taken, so that we really need to know how many women, if this thing been done, what the proportion number of women will be taken into task or employment. So we need to have this kind of things in hand before any development coming. We will also need to encounter the young people and women's perspective, opinions to be taken into consideration.
The inclusion of women enables a systematic change. There can no longer be the excuse that they don't have the skills or knowledge, for particularly at the community level, women have a deep understanding of the ways in which their communities thrive or struggle. However, when included, women can learn and transform the way that decisions are made, as well as learn through participation or action within decision-making spaces.
I can see conflict or insecurity coming from lack of understanding, and there is not enough space given to women. I come from an Anglican church, and I come from a culture that is patrilineal, and when it comes to women in decision making, it's quite difficult. Maybe one of the causes is the lack of information on security. That's what I gathered when I was sitting there listening to all the presentations. I said, this is an area that we need to explain, or the word needs to be simplified, and for people to know that security doesn't only mean that, but then where does conflict come in? And it's a lack of space for people to, speak about the challenges, to speak about the lack of knowledge. Peace and security is not militarization, but it also has aspects that link with the economic well-being of a nation or a family or even the community, and also the social aspects of it, and also health.
Goal 16 of the new Sustainable Development Goals outlines the need to promote peaceful and inclusive societies for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all, and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. This includes the need to have responsive, participatory, and representative decision-making. Without any of this, you're going to have the situation that you have today: more disenfranchised and disengaged people.
The other causes of security could be the fact that young women are facing a lot of challenges in terms of being jobless. And just talking to a lot of young girls that have left school, I'm saying that they don't have a space. They don't have a space in societies because there's no jobs for them. They feel that they're being neglected. A lot of them feel frustrated, and they tend to take that frustration out by abusing substances such as kava, alcohol, sex, for example. Cigarettes, marijuana is also another big thing. And then they take one step to abuse all substances, or to unconsciously hurting themselves without knowing the fact that whatever they're putting themselves into, the trouble they're putting themselves into, just leads to another. And a lot of these issues would lead to teenage pregnancies, or even some to attempted murder. Some even murdered themselves, and that's what I believe, that early diagnosis is a key to prevention of anything, to prevention of deaths, to attempted murder. And if we can recognize and understand the issues that our women are facing.
Because of these lack of spaces, leaving our people, our women, and our young women out of the picture for so long, they seem to live lives separate from decision-making. Thus, without taking steps to account for their lives outside of this, women in particular can't be actively engaged, as Lisa Hariwapu and James Lockie explain.
Yeah, there are so many challenges, but I guess I would say one of the biggest is getting the women together. There are so many women's organizations, they have their own work, and getting them together on the same level, on the same path, is quite a difficult thing. Not only that, but given the illiteracy rate we have in the Solomon Islands, engaging the rural women for these things is also a challenge for us. Making them understand all these mechanisms, what the mechanisms can do for them is quite difficult. So awareness is one of our big challenges too. Mobilizing resources, especially that the women's organizations are not big in terms of human resources working in themselves. And given the geographical setting that our country have, it's one of the biggest challenges. And not only that, but we also see resource mobilization as one of the important things that we could do to try, especially in awareness, try to spread the awareness programs into the rural areas. So yeah, there are challenges.
And of course, getting women to attend the workshops has also been a real challenge for us, because we cannot take their market space away from them. We have to devise certain ways to get them involved as well. And one of the things we do is maybe for rural women especially, do that workshop in the morning and allow them to go and do their things in the afternoon. So that's the kind of thing we try to do.
Bringing the women together is key, and that's why for 15 years FemLink Pacific has seen the value of investing in a women's community media and policy network, enabling rural women leaders like Lydia Wangalidaki to participate in monthly network meetings in rural centers in Fiji, as well as in network gatherings organized by our regional network and GPAC Pacific Gender Focal Points. Women like Lydia are able to share their development priorities as well as share information and experience to create change and action at a local level.
Education-wise, we need to educate women. Like I said, they need to be prepared in using UNSCR 1325. Preparation is good, like we have on monthly basis, all leaders come in, we prepare the women on what the issues are, which might be different in all cases. Like geographically, we have many different platforms to step into, so preparing the women from out there would be a good timing for us to move out and understanding our issues. Yes, there are communication breakdowns on that, getting every stakeholders to get together on consultations. So maybe we need to collaborate more on the communicating to each other, telling each other the agendas and prioritize women's peace and security in a way that UNSCR 1325 is applying at the moment or implement at the moment. If our big brothers and sisters would come down to us, like the government as a whole and local government, to see that we can collaborate and work with this, prioritize.
I look at those three levels, government, civil society, churches, and all this that needs to be paying attention to all this. But the problem is we're not speaking the same language, and therefore we are not understanding each other.
Yes, right now, for example, in Tonga, just talking about the emerging issues right now that we face in Tonga, is the Sitoa. The church leaders in these small groups, they came up with this idea that somehow Sitoa is a gateway to legalize abortion and same-sex marriage. And even though we don't have guns and and those armed weapons, but you can feel the spirit, the atmosphere right now at home. We're not at peace because all this, the mindset of the people, some of the church leaders, they brainwashed the people because they're very influential people in our country, and so when they twisted something that is not true and make it into their own interpretation or understanding, this is a very dangerous weapon. I think it's more dangerous than having a real weapon.
Well, I think coming together like this, CSOs, faith-based organizations, youth groups, and other, we need to work together. We need to collaborate and really identify what kind of role we each play, because we have got different role to play. And I think, to me, when looking at it from the last 2 days, it's like a jigsaw puzzle, and everybody got to play a part. And then all we need together to do is come together often and really define what you really do, what's your role. Because I'm sure when we all do what we do best according to what we're supposed to do, and we put them together, it will fit.
It's slowly changing. And thanks to the work of women's movement that's alive and progressive in the Pacific. If only the men are brought to the same level where women are at the moment, I think the progress rate is going to be faster. But it's always the way I see it. Women are working very hard, but then the men are not doing anything, yet they are the causes of violence, the perpetrators of the kind of injustices that happens not only to women but to societies and to other men as well as boys.
A 3-day civil society organization forum on peace and security and subsequent GPAC Regional Steering Group meeting was a key point to touch base and reflect on the current state of affairs between the work of civil society and overarching bodies like regional governmental organizations and the United Nations, both of which have in the past few years established organizations or put forth commitments and language to work towards goals like gender equality, parity, and peace.
I can see the progress. How I see the progress now is things like what we're doing now, aligning our civil society meetings with the forum, secretarial, forum.
Pacific Islands Forum Secretary.
Peace Security Committee meetings. Like what we did yesterday when we had our outcome statement, given to them, and the fact that they've accepted it and have it maybe embedded into their own outcomes as well. Well, it influenced their outcomes. So that is one area I see as the development of human security in the region is going at the regional level, and that must be maintained and that must continue. And such meetings such as the one we've just had now, the global, this is a very strategic kind of approach that we're taking, and these strategies must continue to be maintained and improved as we go along to fit into the time, to fit in the, changing times.
The importance of engaging with intergovernmental organizations, including regional organizations and the UN, is a way for peace builders, especially women, to reach out, communicate, and collaborate with government officials. For example, the Regional Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security was intended to be a key guide to have national action plans. Yet, at a national level, many structural issues remain, blocking progress in the areas of gender and conflict prevention, and without RIGO pressure and support, change doesn't occur. Yet, civil society organizations continue to carry the flag and remind states of their commitments and the need to have these promises implemented and trickle down to the community level.
We also have our the peace ministry who have mechanisms like the peace and reconciliation structure in place, though implementation of it is one issue for us. And we also have our structures in the villages, especially for personal security. We also have the chiefs in the villages, although it's not also working properly for us. They need strengthening of all that. We're really happy that the current government, which is the DCC, is addressing that. And also there are mechanisms in place that like for example for 1325 we already have an action plan, but it is still in the draft stage, so we are yet to fully finalize the draft into the national action plan, and then the other thing is the implementation of it. We already have the Family Protection Act in place. The thing that's left for us is implementing the whole act, or putting it into activities that would really help us.
Without a permanent space in regional processes addressing peace and security, women are using innovative approaches to communicate the priorities they're living with on a daily basis.
And now this year we are continuing to advocate for human securities in the programs that we do. Like for example, this week the women are going out to a big conference in the Western Province, it's Choiseul Province, and they are going to talk about human security. But how they're going to talk about it, it's not just that human security, blah, blah, no. There are different approaches in different communities that you go and try to explain human security. So a way of saying that is asking the women and leading them to say, how is this, how are you, what is your state at the moment? And then they'll be saying this, and then we will go in to say that is why Voice Plumerian is existing, because when you are informed and you know about all these things, then you are able to make informed choices about your life, to live a peaceful life, to be able to make decisions, to be able to influence decisions. Yes, I have seen that in the attempts by different governments and my own government in Solomon Islands, who now have a draft national action plan on women, peace and security, and that's very encouraging. Right now, with the regional women, peace and security plan enabled us and to be able to have our own national action plan, and the approach used in making this possible was the way in which the government, ministry, and the civil society were working together. And if you remember, we were able to bring government representatives with us to these forums like this, and so it made them understand us more about what we're all about. And it's all about us as women of the world and women of Solomon Islands. So it's about our families as well. So when you have strategic people attending meetings like this with civil society, at the end of the day, we're talking about the same people. And the different frameworks that we work on will be developed in such a way because of the knowledge we have, and we're well versed with what it's all about, and we'll do plans that are inclusive and that suits or fits into the context of whatever countries we come from. And so this approach is a very well approach. And I would say that for Solomon Islands, it's because of this approach that we are able to have our national action plan, draft one in place. It's been reviewed, and now we're waiting for a technical person to come and develop the plan for us. And that's where we are at the moment in Solomon Islands.
I think at the moment what I'm hearing and I'm seeing is there is a lot of work being done. But I also see that the CSO are the ones that are really they have all the energy. You can see the energy in CSOs when they're together. But we need to see that energy among the governments too. The governments need to have that kind of energy, not only in the Foreign Affairs Department or the Home Affairs, but you need all people in ministries of all parts, all levels of the government to be aware of peace and security, and not only relying on the police, but also the police themselves. And the army needs to know about the other aspects of peace, so that they can think when there's an issue and a conflict, they don't think a gun straight away, but how do we solve this in a more peaceful way.
These realities and more reiterate the need to shift from action planning itself into concrete action, through financing, through gender mainstreaming, and through the shifts from reactive to proactive approaches to conflict. It's been 15 years since the UN Security Council adopted Resolution 1325, yet women are still systematically excluded, and development happens without consultation and participation. 1325 was never about women in the military or used as instruments in military strategy, but rather that women's work and priorities need to be respected and incorporated into the wider development framework of states. If conflict is to occur, women's leadership must be recognized and the sustainability of peace prioritized to ensure action to stem violence and resolve conflict is effective. How can we even begin to talk about a culture of peace if we don't address the culture of silence, the silent protest, frustration, and anger of people of the Pacific seemingly living off the radars of leaders despite commitments made at international, regional, and national forums? Thus, states and non-state actors must recognize and act on their roles. Planning and promises can only do so much to aid development and peace in these times. Women peace builders need resources, and investing in them in their work also means ensuring that such investment respects their agency. It's all key to establishing lasting peace. In the words and writings of Radhika Kumaraswamy, formerly the Undersecretary General of the United Nations and Special Representative for Children and Armed Conflict, who's penning the 15-year review of 1325, in all previous generations, when the world was at war, women have come forward as peacemakers and peace builders, and today is no exception. It still happens at the local level. The international world, by embracing celebrity culture, has forgotten these women and allows them to remain invisible. It's important to turn the spotlight again onto these women peace builders, to support and fund their efforts. Networks must be created at the local, regional, and international level, so that their voices and activities can reach a climax and stem the current tide of recurrent militarization and mindless violence.